How to start a story. Step 1, cry. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Ian Chaffin, author of a lot of books, or at least 2, and knower of a lot of things. And today we're celebrating my first Authortube collaboration. I'm so happy. Yay! So Story Detective, a lot of people, and, you know, me, of course, duh, are doing an awesome collaboration together where it's not just like 1 or 2 author-tubers or write-tubers or whatever you want to call yourself, but it's a huge amount. Like, I don't even know the numbers, but I've heard that there's a lot of people joining in on this collaboration, which is spectacular and awesome and so cool, and I'm so excited. But yes, anyways. So this means you won't only get to see my video on story openings, you'll get to see so many other videos and so many other takes on how to start a story. And I am super excited. So after you get done with this video, go check out my playlist with all the other videos as well. So let's get real here. There's not one way to start a story. And if there was, stories would get real boring real quick and very snoozy. Like, yeah. So before you sit down and you go, oh no, my story isn't like insert awesome story here, you have to not freak out. Remember, this is your writing. Whether you're doing nonfiction, fiction, whether you're doing historical, whether you're doing fantasy or sci-fi or some random mixture of romantic horror mystery thing. No matter what you're doing, whether it's a whole novel or just a short story, remember, it's going to be different, and that's okay. So please definitely take my advice, use it, see if it works out for you, and if it doesn't, that's all right. There are so many other people doing story openings that you'll find the one that works for you. Even if you don't use mine or theirs, or you come up with a weird conglomeration Frankenstein's type style between ours, that's awesome. That means that you have found something that works for you and your story, and it's gonna be great. So the advice I'm about to give you is basically from my personal experience. Of course, it's what's worked for me. It's developed over time from like reading all these different ways to start a story, to write a story in general, but also it's come from experience of writing Loading Life, writing a nonfiction book, and in the process of rewriting an entire book that I've already written, already published as an ebook, taken down. That's a whole story by itself. So if you want to know why my 3rd book and the first book of a series is going through this whole redo, whole like just change everything type thing, let me know in the comments down below. It's something that I really want to talk about anyways, so yes. But without further ado, here are my 4 to 5 things, steps, ways, and such to a great story opening. Yeah. Step 1, or whatever we're calling these, don't worry if you don't start at the beginning. In all honesty, when I was writing Loading Life, I was like, this is gonna be my beginning, this is gonna work out, this is gonna be great. Yeah, it didn't last that long. I had to rewrite the opening like 2 or 3 times until I got just right. And what I have now definitely works for the story. So yes, that also goes along with nonfiction. You know, maybe you want to write a beautiful letter that just pours your heart out and says, this is why I'm writing this guide, and da-da-da-da. And then maybe people just don't want to listen to your whole life story, and you have to cut some things and be very precise, especially with nonfiction. Definitely be precise with nonfiction, especially if it's a guide or something like that. That's just like a bonus tip. So don't worry if you don't start at the beginning, or if you put like a filler opening at the beginning just to hold its place, and then just keep writing and writing and writing and, you know, outlining or whatever you like to do. And then once you have it all good and great, stop and go back to the beginning and be like, does this fit what I'm trying to do? And to go along with that is step number 2, figure out what your story is about. So you can't write an opening if you don't know what your story is about. You know, it's one thing to be like, okay, I want these characters, I want this plot, I want this setting, but what's it about? What's the main core of your story? Is it unrequited love like Romeo and Juliet? Is it an action adventure like pretty much every single movie that's ever been made for the most part in the last 30 years? And I'm not just talking about genre here, I'm talking about the core of it. For example, Loading Life. The genre is a weird mix between sci-fi fantasy, more fantasy-esque with sci-fi elements and all. But the main core of it is this boy who's trying to find how he fits in life and hating every single part of life altogether. So my story opening, where he's being chased by thugs and he's always had this rotten life, and it reflects on how he looks at his life and everyone around him as well. There's always layers to stories, and just staying on the top and skimming the top where, it's, oh, what's the genre and all that, won't answer that question. And if you do stay up there, your story's gonna seem kind of shallow at best. Of course, that is a totally different video altogether. To go along with this is tip number 3. Pull your readers in with action that actually goes along with your story. So if your story is a romance between two lovers, please don't have a freaking car chasing scene at the beginning, because that's going to show your audience, oh wow, it's an adventure, and oh, gasp. Please don't have a car chase scene at the beginning of your novel, because that won't make sense to your readers or to anyone else. I've actually read quite a lot of, help books and all that when it comes to writing, and there have been people apparently who have done this, where it's something like, oh, well, I've heard that you need to grab your reader and never let go of them, so that's why I put the car chase scene there. But, that has nothing to do with pretty much everything in my novel, so yeah. So when you do this, when you put something that isn't like what your story is about or doesn't have a feel for your story, it's kind of like lying to your reader, and it's total betrayal. Very sad. So, don't do that. Figure out what your story is about and then make a list of ideas for the story opening that go along with that story. So if your story is a high stakes adventure, yeah, you might want to have something that is high stakes adventure. If your story is kind of like The Hobbit, where it's a journey to find oneself and an adventure and all that, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with all the dragons and all the evil in the world, you might want to have an opening that is very peaceful, and then with a hint of, it's about to change for the worse, so get ready. Tip 4, ask yourself, is there a specific scene, character, time period, event, or anything else that you want to highlight in your opening? Take, for example, Twilight. Now, before anyone goes, ee, or anything like that, hush, I'm making a good point here. At the beginning of Twilight, you see Bella looking on to Edward, who's about to commit like a huge crime that can get him killed, and she's running towards him to stop him. And then it stops and goes to where Bella actually meets Edward and all that loveliness, And this is actually done pretty well. Whatever you think of the series, that's on you, whatever. But this opening is done really well because it highlights, 1, a very important scene in the first book, and 2, who the main characters are and who you're going to go through the mind of, Bella, and 3, something for the reader to look forward to. So they're not like, oh, it's like a romance. Instead, they're like, oh, it's like a romance, but with a vampire sense. Ooh, I think I like this. So take it from Twilight and pick a scene, a character, anything that you want to highlight the most. When it comes to the Parent's Guide, I give you a specific reason of why I'm writing the book. It's because of my past. And the reason why I want to help parents learn more about anime, manga, and cosplay. Or even from my book Pride, where I have an event that's happened in the past where character A and character B have met. And that's kind of a thing I'm going to have for the entire series, so a little bit of spoiler right there, but that's okay. And tip 5, try different ways to write your beginning. And a bonus tip, outlines are your friends. So whether you outline before, during, or after your first draft, you need to sit down and be like, okay, what kinds of openings can I have? Now, I'll tell you, I had to do 2 or 3 for Loading Life, and I had to rewrite the opening letter to Parent's Guide, but I definitely had to rewrite Pride's opening, and I'll tell you why. So my first chapter has, a different sense and feel to it than what it had in the past, mainly because I actually had to rewrite the point of view of it. And in this actual huge overdue rewrite, I actually take the opening that I had in, 7 or so drafts, and I'm pushing it further into the story, just by 2 or 3 chapters, where I can insert an even better opening, where you get more sense of the characters and the relationships and all that. So there have been a lot of times where I have rewritten this entire opening for Pride, and in all honesty, I think it actually works better this way. So don't be afraid to sit there and be like, oh, great, I'm gonna have to rewrite this opening and all that, or oh no, I'm gonna have to rewrite the entire show, series, book, thing to fit my opening. Sometimes you change just the opening and it works for everything else. Other times you have to rewrite the entire book. It's a thing, it's a process, it's what happens, especially if you're a new writer. So hey, all those new writers out there, whether you're in your teens or you're older or you're in between or anything like that, it's okay to have to rewrite, all right? So don't freak out. No freaky. No. So I hope these tips, steps, things, or whatever we're calling them, has really helped you all figure out how you're going to accomplish your story opening. And to give you all even more of an idea, definitely check out that playlist of all these awesome collaborators on this big, huge Authortube project. And if you are interested in reading the first 3 or so chapters of Loading Life, I will have the link down below. Same with the Parent's Guide. And if you have any ideas or experiences of how to make a really good story opening, let me know in the comments down below. I love conversation. Yes, I do. That's why I talk 300 miles an hour. And without further ado, thank you all for joining me, and thank you all for joining the rest of the Authortubers in this awesome, cool collab. And a thank you to Matthew Petipos. Thank you, Matthew Petipos, for subscribing, and I hope I'm saying your name right. And I'll see y'all later, alligators. Bye-bye!